Now, it's all right, somebody's got their sound on.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have an apology from Jeremy McPhail. Would someone like to move with that?
I can move that.
Thank you. Seconded by Chairman, thank you. Those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Carried. Declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest relating to the topics before this meeting on this agenda? If not, move on.
Mr. Just for clarity, I do have a consent through one of my operations in the system, so I don't know if that needs to be recorded or not.
Is it related to this report?
No, not really.
Council?
I'm just making sure that people know I've got a consent in the process. So.
Oh, okay. Public forums, petitions and deputations. There's not seem to be any at the moment, not that I'm aware of. I have confirmations of minutes from the 2nd of September meeting, which are in your agenda. Would someone who was present there like to move? If it's true that it's a true and correct record.
I can move.
Thank you. Seconded by David. Is there any discussion? If not, I'll put the motion that it's true and correct record. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
It's carried. Moving on to notification of extraordinary and urgent business. None of that. There is a supplementary report that has been taken. There's not a supplementary report, just additional information, okay. Are there any questions? No one has notified me then. No question? Chairman and councillors' reports. Are there any? There's no report from the chairman. No councillors' reports? Okay. Staff report, item 9. The annual compliance monitoring report, which you have a draft copy of in your, either in your computer or amongst your papers, presented by Compliance Manager Simon.
Thank you, Chair. Just before you can see a copy of the draft compliance monitoring report for 2019-2020 year. Just a couple of things of note within that. You'll notice during the COVID-19 process, we had to put a different classification on the incidents that we attended. We had 2 officers attend incidents in 2 different vehicles for obviously health and safety reasons. So we put a more stringent criteria around which incidents we went to and which ones we didn't. That would therefore put a lot of incidents which would normally be in either the medium or possibly the high category into a lower category. So you'll see this year, although we had the same amount of incidents, there are a lot more lower than higher categories, and that was due to the health and safety of the officers rather than the seriousness of the actual incident that was reported to us.
Thank you, Simon.
So we also work with industries to ensure more compliance with consent conditions, and we also it's the compliance monitoring report is in the same format as it's previously been. What I've handed out as well is a smaller infographic that basically gives the highlights or lowlights, whichever you wish, of the particular compliance monitoring report.
I hadn't had that term infographic before. A new word for me.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was told by our comms that it was an infographic. I'm just showing off.
They will know.
Yeah. Well, I can't spell it. Do you know the meaning?
Clearly impressed.
Thank you. So, are we now on to the actual draft report, Simon?
Yes.
There may be some commentary or questions from councillors. What?
Yeah, good report, Simon, but I had about 5 or 6 things which aren't typos, but I was just wondering if I could run them through just to make sure the report does what we want it to do. For instance, like the front page, the photo, just behind the staff member there, it looks like a run of water going down. I presume it's some sort of string or whatever, but it looks like there's a leak in the irrigator. You notice it more on this big one here.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, I believe that is a stick rather than a leak.
A what?
A stick of some description.
Yeah, for clarity, I was wondering whether we could block it out or do something. That was my.
I will have a chat to our comms department to see if we can Photoshop that in.
On page 7, we talk about the 19 season, and I wondered to make that whether it should be the 18-19 season. And the reason I say that is we plant in the 18 season and we feed off in the 19 season. And that means that their planning, critical source area management, et cetera, is all worked through. So I just asked, are we correctly reporting? Should it be the 18-19 is the question. On page 10, the graph there on at the bottom, I was wondering whether we should add where the New Zealand standard is, because at the moment that really just shows me the spread, but it doesn't show me whether there's anything of an issue there. And I presume that all those above 11.3 are an issue. And I just wondered, should we put something else in there, because some of our behaviours are driven by what we find through compliance. On pages 15, 17 and 28, as you record through your yellow, green, red colours, I got a little bit confused about whether we're recording the performance of the consent conditions, because some of the comments there read about environmental, there was no impact on the environment comment. And I just want to make sure that we were saying the same thing continuously through that. And I wasn't too sure whether, especially on page 28, the comments around the consent conditions, whether it shouldn't have been a higher colour, maybe a red, because of the mismatch. So I was just trying to make sure that we were consistent through that. And the last one really is on the very last page. You talk about ED and AN, but there's no reference to what that actually means within the sentencing and fine columns.
You're talking about page 80?
Page 79. It's got a comment there in the last one under Carpenter, to be withdrawn by E/O by consent, and I didn't know whether there's an enforcement order or what that was, and AN, which is in the next column over, upon breach of AN, and I didn't know, there was no reference to refer to that abbreviation.
Yeah, sorry. In an effort to try and keep everything as easy to read as possible, we've probably slipped into an acronym of enforcement order and an abatement notice, something that we use quite a lot, but you quite rightly point out that it's not necessarily.
Apart from that, I thought that I read the report, obviously from front to back. I found it interesting to read, and there was a number of comments in there. I thought we need to take this as a foundation forward into the next into Lucy's policy and planning work, because it's important that we understand where the performance is. And it looks like in there, if I'm assuming, there's quite a bit of, if I said non-compliance to consent conditions rather than environmental mismanagement. That's what I sort of picked up, and there was a number that hadn't met the consent conditions, hadn't had timely data supplied, or was lack of data supplied, was more a reason why you downgraded them more than an environmental impact. So I was just trying to make sure that they knew that we were watching and we were looking, and it was important if you have consent conditions that you comply. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. So at the moment we're dealing with item 1, which is compliance monitoring report in draft form. Councillor McKellen has suggested some changes just for clarification purposes. Does anyone else have any question or commentary about that report? Yes, Chairman.
Well, just following on from Lloyd, when I look at the urban sewage schemes, the amount of red there, some members of the public pick it up, they're going to say, are we treating everybody the same? It's red detail, some of it is conditions rather than breaches, but some of them are breaches. So what happens in those situations? They don't all, there's the odd one in Southern Court, but we use the full suite of enforcement, I guess. So
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. Non-compliances are normally met with, as you quite rightly say, the full suite of enforcement options, being both punitive and directive. And they can account from anything from a warning through to a prosecution. A number of, I suppose, issues when you have a discharge and a blanket. If there is something that happens, then we respond in this particular way. That goes against all kind of good compliance that you can do, because we need to make people comply in the best way possible. Quite often you'll find that, especially in sewerage overflows or stormwater, that they are beyond the consent holders' foreseeability as such. The amount of unusual items you find in stormwater drains and sewerage lines is quite astounding, and quite often it's what's put into those systems that actually causes the overflow. That said, we do have constant contact with our TLA colleagues, territorial authorities and their stormwater and sewage, and we work with them to actually obtain compliance, or as close to compliance as they can.
Just as a superficial observation that nearly all of those non-compliances for industrial sewage treatment, stormwater, etc., are self-reports.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, yes, I'd say of the 90% region, they're self-reported.
Well, we would anticipate that's a good sign that consent holders are conscious of their responsibilities, and when they can't meet them, they just know. And hopefully they just know what they're doing about it as well.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, their consents are designed in such a way that that is a requirement, that they must inform us when something goes wrong, as is in most discharge consents. In these particular areas as well, they have their own form of compliance, seeing that they have so many inlets into their system. They do their own investigations as well, and then supply us with the information. We just have a audit of that information to see if it's valuable enough, if they got to the reason, etc. And then, as I say, we work with them to get that compliance.
Thank you. No further questions or commentary. The recommendation is we resolve to note the compliance monitoring report prior to public release. Do we have a mover for that? Thank you. Councillor Major, seconded by Councillor Guyton. Thank you. All those in favour? Aye. Anyone against? That's carried. Thank you, Simon, for that, for presenting the report and for the explanations accompanying it. Item 2 is we're on again for Environmental Compliance Division report up till the 6th of November.
Yes, thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Compliance activities, I'll take them as read. The discharge permit inspections, we got through 161. Unfortunately, we've had a person leave our monitoring crew, and that's the staff member on the front of the compliance monitoring report. So we're in the process of getting somebody to replace her. Industry inspections, we've had 11 of them, 330 consent condition audits and meeting with consent holders. 226 incidents were received, and you can see the breakdown of them, air again being one of the bigger calls for service. I'll take you down to the compliance plan, as we've covered the compliance monitoring report. The compliance plan is something that we've been running for a couple of years now, and I believe that we are one of the only councils that actually do this report. The compliance plan is an effort to actually show the public and the councillors what we're going to be concentrating on in the years to come. This is basically taken from the monitoring events that we have, monitoring of industries, etc., incidents that we're called out to, and conversations with consent holders and the general public. In the compliance plan that's been sent to you, there's a couple of spelling mistakes. We have corrected them, and I'll thank the Comms Department for pointing them out. We also have a target under one of the priorities of improving water quality. We've changed, there is a 90% compliance with conditions to top performers are celebrated. And in the reducing discharges from domestic burning and air quality, improving air quality, we've changed the reduction in previous years' airshed exceedances to reduce the number of new nuisance emission complaints. So this is one of the, this gives us scope to understand what we'll be doing in the next few years, and it also gives us a priority of what we need to cut off when we get more and more work from the the more consents that we're going to get through the MPS and the NES. So just to cover off what we did in this report for the compliance work plan for last year. Priority 1, improving water quality. We commenced dairy discharges, consent monitoring, continuation of monitoring urban water quality, a few other things there, and we are currently working with laws to increase our understanding of plantation forestries. Unfortunately, it was another national environment standard that was given to us for us to make sure that there was compliance on, and it also has a flow-on effect for our land and water services and our consents department. Priority 2, reducing discharges from domestic burning. We started a program where we could identify areas of high risk within the airsheds, and they were vulnerable communities, high incidence recording, etc. But unfortunately, due to lack of resourcing, we've had to cease that. Although we do continue with our Goodwood suppliers and also free firewood giveaway promotions. Responding to calls for service, as I mentioned in the compliance monitoring report, we've had a bit of difference with the incident loadings, more low rather than high. Water quantities, we're looking more at high water takes at the moment and reducing impacts on coastal areas. We've completed our white paint inspections, and we are looking at agricultural inspections as time will tell, as we have people that we can look at. If I could just take you back also to a compliance behaviour change in the dairy sector report that we had done. This was a pilot study that we completed to get a better understanding of the people that we monitor in the dairy sector. So it's quite often we do, the people that we unfortunately deal with quite often, we tend to be swept away with their opinions of the loudest voice. And it is good sometimes to actually get a good feeling of what's happening out there. So obviously what we've done in the past, if we've defaulted back to are you happy with our service? But obviously we're a regulator, and asking somebody if they're just happy with our service after we've enforced them or something will probably give us a skewed result. Therefore, what we're looking at here is we're looking at 3 aspects. We're looking at, we're asking them about how fair and reasonable they felt they've been treated, how they consider their own attitude to compliance in the wider scheme, and how it's shifted in the past year, and a broader analysis of how important they see compliance, not only to the Southland region, but also to the dairy industry. Some interesting findings there. One of the bigger ones that I kind of took some interest in is the results of what people felt they were doing with their own compliance. Remembering that we've got to caveat this particular report because it was done during COVID-19, so it is a low final sample, and we do have a bit of time bias on this. So we asked quite a bit of time after they were inspected in some cases. What we did, or what I did take from this, was that an overwhelming support for compliance, both for Southland and for the industry. But what I also took from it was that there was a real devotion to actually being compliant. People were wanting to be compliant, and that will be driving for the next year going forward. How do we as a compliance department make it easier for people to comply? How do we celebrate top performers? And how do we make it easier for people to apply for certain, or how do we make sure that the people that are on the farm understand the conditions they have? So we've got a number of programs that will happen in the next year about that. And at the moment, we've got one going with our top performers, and they have the ability to assess themselves for compliance, and then we do a random check of 15% of them. So they have to, it's a very high bar to get to that top performers, and I believe we have approximately 49 to 50 people that have been categorised in that area. So on the whole, there were some learnings from this. One of the key learnings is we asked if you had a question, who would you ask? Would you ask governance? Would you ask compliance? Or would you ask the manager? I rate a very poor third, I believe, which was a bit of a surprise to me. I thought everybody rang me, but there you go. But what it did show is that we really need to ask the question of why did you choose to ring that person? I think that was an opportunity that we missed there, so that we could understand what A, they were concerned about, and B, why they thought the appropriate person was to go to that particular person. It was good that I think it was about 75% of people chose to come to either the compliance officer or the compliance manager, but there is, I believe it was a 15% that actually rang up governance, I believe. So
24 on that one.
Sorry?
24 on that one.
24, thanks for that correction, I undervalued that. So 24%, so we need to know, yeah. Okay, just to reiterate, overwhelmingly us, but yes, you come a close second. So yeah, it would be something that would be really good to understand why they've chosen those pathways, what they were concerned about, was it minor or major, and what was their first phone call and why was it to this particular entity. So that was something that we missed on that particular thing. Maybe we'll get it in a future iteration. So that's the report as such, and I'm open to questions.
Just on that last, thanks, Al. Just on that last point about who they called, I would have anticipated a much higher number of people would have called their local representative because they would probably know them or know of them. They might, and
so it would be
probably feel they haven't got a bias one way or the other.
Yeah, I think it would be, as I say, we really missed a question there on asking why. So if it was something along the lines of there was a minor problem with their monitoring event, then it's understandable that they would ring the compliance officer that turned up. But if it was more serious and they felt that governance was needed, then we would like to know why that was. Or alternatively, if it was a minor infraction that they could deal with staff, then maybe it would be interesting to know why they would contact governance rather than the compliance officer on site at the time.
Thank you. Right, Councillor Guyton is next.
Thank you, Jim. Yeah, thanks, Simon. It's very good and very thought-provoking report. And obviously you've been thinking, or your team's been thinking. I like the increase in nuance that you've taken and actually finding out about these otherwise blunt responses, perhaps. So it's a very encouraging, I think, a very encouraging sign. One of the, and your comment about asking the question directly after having been visited, perhaps, is a very good one. It reminds me of when you might ask people in the general public, do they appreciate being taxed? It's a similar kind of thing, isn't it? You know what
It is.
That's right, yeah. But one detail I wondered about was you changed the reporting from, in the dairy sector, compliance from a 90% compliance rate to celebrating good performance or whatever it was you quite said. Why did you do that? Why did you take that figure out of the?
So that in the, yes, through you, Mr. Chair, in the compliance plan, it was in reflection to that, the 90% compliance what I felt was a wee bit out of our ability to sway. If somebody's compliant or not compliant, I was concerned that it would be an unrealistic target for my officers to actually influence. The reason I felt that we should look at the top performers is to look at that bell curve that we all get reminded of, that we don't concentrate enough on the top performers. We don't listen to those people enough in my department, because we are forced to concentrate on the bottom 5%. So that's why I changed that.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Beard.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. So, yeah, good report, Simon. I enjoyed reading that report, understanding that that we are seeking information from consent holders, and I know farmers get asked to complete questionnaires on a fairly regular basis. So I'm not so disappointed that you didn't get everyone to respond, but you got, I think a reasonable sample, enough to draw some conclusions. And certainly, having read through it, it was good to see some of the feedback that was coming. I think it shows a growing maturity of consent holders, that they are beginning to realise the significance of what they've got and what's expected of them, and from I guess understanding a lot of the farms who, particularly those who changed from one land use to another, as in maybe sheep and beef to dairy, it's quite a transformation as far as what they've done before to what's expected of them now that they've been given a consent documentation and the expectation that comes with it. So I think there is a maturing group of farmers who understand their responsibilities, and I really hope that in the future that the results get better.
Thank you. Chairman.
Yes, congratulations on doing this report. I think it is quite helpful. It's good feedback. It sort of tells me we're on a journey. Basically, the feedback is that your staff are doing a good job on improving. We've still got a percentage there that say we could do better, but I think at least it gives you a measure. I think it's something we should do again in a year or two and just see how we go. We're going to the model of continuous improvement. It's a way of actually showing that's working, and give also, I guess, gives good feedback to you.
Thank you, Chairman. I think we've been asking questions about attitudes and responses around this table for a while, so this is actually valuable information. And it's a good basis to work from for the next one, hopefully not interrupted by a pandemic, so that you can ask the questions that are more closer to the event. Yes. I mean, the visits, that's what I'm talking about, Lyndall. So your memory of a visit is much clearer a week later than it is 3 or 4 months later.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, I wasn't frowning because of that. I was
Sorry. I was
frowning.
getting the body language.
I was frowning about something else. Big pardon. I keep my frowning to myself.
No, I think that's a valuable report for the organisation and for the staff and for the knowledge of the councillors here. So, congratulations.
Thank you.
Are there any further comments or questions about that report which Simon has presented? Item 2.
Have to move the report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman. Seconded by Councillor McKellen. There's no further discussion. Put the motion. Those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone against? It's carried. Thank you, Simon, for your very full report. Consents activity and performance with Consents Manager Aurora Grant.
Good afternoon. The report is read, but just before I start, a couple of corrections that I'd like to point out. In the summary, there's 87 decisions made. But you'll note on the attached report, it details 95 decisions made over the reporting period. The difference in that number was the difference between when that report was pulled, which was later in the day, and several decisions had gone out. So apologies for not pulling that number through to the summary. It's been a busy report period for us over the reporting time. 100% of applications lodged during the period were processed in-house, except for the ones that have been out for some period of time, and those are our larger ones, the likes of aquaculture and some of the bigger, more complex ones that are working through the system. Timeframe compliance over the period was again 100%, and we've got our large notified applications, which you have been reported to before, heading to hearing over the next couple of weeks. I'm hoping to close a few of those before Christmas. So that is our Gore District Council bridge application and our Alliance Untitled hearing, which is scheduled for next week. Gore Bridge will be heard in the week of the 15th of December. That application is being heard as a joint hearing with Gore District Council. We've had a few changes internally in our resourcing space. So Lacey Bragg has been appointed to team leader, and the other team leader position we are recruiting for currently with Lydia Haywood moved internally to a different team. Jade McRae's moved into the Senior Consent Officer position, which means we are now recruiting for Consent Officer position. So the recruitment continues. Moving forward, MPS and NES for freshwater, that has taken priority for the team over the reporting period. And it has some ongoing resourcing implications. So what we're finding is our number of inquiries that are coming in have increased by 20%. And these inquiries are taking longer for the team to work through, often running over the half an hour free which we offer for potential applicants. So what this means is it's taking up more of our advice and education as a budget, and it is also meaning that applications coming in require more feedback to consultants and applicants in the initial check-over of those applications. We're also starting to see some applications come in under the new NES for the likes of feed pads, and definitely a lot of interest in the community about when will the doors be open for processing of intensive winter grazing consents. So on that, we're working with internally with Land and Water Services, with planning and compliance on what those consents will look like, but also doing a lot of work nationally through the Consents Managers Group to line up approaches to intensive winter grazing. We are still waiting for information from MFA on what farm plans look like and how that lines up with consenting requirements. So there's work going on in that space. Also doing a lot of work through the Consents Consultants Working Group on what they're hearing in the community and what their needs are going to be moving into preparing applications. Cool, so I think that's the summaries. Yeah, happy to take any questions.
Yes, Councillor McKellen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When do you think you'll have a clarity on the intensive winter grazing?
Through you, Mr. Chair. We, as a national consenting group, hope to be making a determination on that in the next 2 weeks on when we're able to accept and process those applications. Various councils are obtaining legal opinions on the legality of processing those before those intensive winter grazing rules are actually in effect. So there is a legal question mark there which we're working through, but are really conscious that community needs certainty over that pathway. So we're looking this side of Christmas at having some communications out from the consenting.
Can I just follow on with you? Would we be able to see that consenting process, what that looks like? I think there's an expectation that it'll be simple and fast, and whether the Simon's app or whatever is able to be used, and what that actually looks like. I think part of that process is its simplicity. It's what does it need to address in that corridor of intensive winter grazing, which is not a full landscape consenting, but it's actually a file within a file, as it were. I think the community's looking for that, I think.
They are, yeah, recognise that. The work that's underway at the moment, obviously there is the advisory group, which is going to be reporting back. Consents is separate from that, but keeping in touch with that process. But tools that are being developed nationally are looking at which pathways could be simple and what are the tools that we need to put out there to make that happen. Some of the pathways for consenting intensive winter grazing aren't going to be simple. It just depends on what the individual's doing on their property and what other rules they trigger. So if they only trigger one part of the NES, say slope, then those could be simple. But if they trigger a whole lot of our rules, including under our proposed plan, then we're getting into a trickier pathway. So we are looking at that to provide a very complex sort of scenario into a clear and transparent pathway.
If I could follow on again, Mr. Chairman, sorry. The issue here, I think, if I talk on behalf of the community, is cost. What does that cost look like? And for a lot of them, they may trigger some rules because of, at the moment, NES triggers sowing dates, crop over tile drains, slope, etc., etc. It could get quite a messy area, and I think we're looking to try and clear that. If we have a barrier, and I say barrier of cost, then that's going to be another window that is going to be quite hard for the community, especially for sheep and beef, because this is not a dairy thing, this is a sheep and beef exercise, and some of those are quite big scale, so it depends what rules they trigger on the way through, and considering things that they've never considered before. I think we need to be careful on how we move this forward. So I'd rather be certain, but be a little bit longer to get it right, and I think our communication strategy around this is really, really important.
Councillor Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, just along those lines, looking at consents going into next year, just with the water and land plan where it is at the moment, obviously it's not nailed down, it could be some considerable time, and farm environmental plans too, because I think there's a perception out there that that's going to have a reasonable play in whether you need a consent or not, and that doesn't look as though that's going to happen until probably come out of the Ministry of Environment until about July. So you've got that, and also the physiographics, which is still up in the air a bit, and the system has to work through that as well. So all of those things, how does that play out as far as consent process for the farm for wintering consents? Because all of those three different issues are going to actually play a part in that.
Through you, Mr. Chair. I recognise that there is a lot of things up in the air at the moment for the community, and also for our team. We're working with all of those different plans and changes from central government, and it is very much a moving phase. So we're aware of that, and we are working through it, and we do understand the need for some clarity.
I realise it's going to be reasonably difficult. It's not going to make the job any easier because all those different areas are sorted, which would make it easier. Yes.
So through your chair, yes, the team can only work with the tools they've got in front of them at the moment, and always it is. So when things are like farm environment plans aren't settled yet, then we can't really even think about it. So, not an ideal space. And we're doing some work with the advisory group around, how do we connect all of this up a bit more. I think as Aurora has outlined, we're working pretty closely with the other consenting teams throughout the country to get a more joined up approach to this as well. So, and this won't be the last conversation we have around meeting the requirements of the NES around intensive wintergrazing, I'm sure. So this will be something you can look forward to, further conversations.
Yeah, I suppose the question will be asked, are you going to take a cautious approach? That'll be the question that will be asked out there, yeah.
By the minister or by the community?
By the community, yeah.
So there's some clear expectations, I guess, that we're getting from Wellington around the space, and so we've got to navigate that space. But we're working closely with the community so everyone understands, I guess, and there's as clear a pathway as we can for this. But we certainly recognise that it's a challenging area, and we've got to navigate our way through it. And I guess what we're stressing as well is we've got to focus on improving water quality as we do this.
Human Hall.
Yes, just following on from what Rob said, over the next few weeks, we hope to get advice back from the advisory group, which will then lead to advice to the ministers. But we always knew, even under our own plan, that there would be the need for a consenting regime. So the Simon's app, the development of that, and as efficient as possible, consenting regime was always going to be needed. It's just to try and sort of work through some of the things with the government. So otherwise we might be looking at thousands. If we're looking at thousands in the short term, that's got a real resourcing issue. But we're on the case. And it won't stop our staff doing what they're doing now, because whether it's for a lot of people or for a smaller number of people, we still need something in place, and that linked up national conversation and consistency, hopefully efficiencies in doing these things is going to be really important too.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Guyton and then Councillor Beard.
Thank you, Chairman. It's just a quick point. Could I ask councillors who are talking to these issues, when they use the word community, could they be specific as to what they're talking about? Do they mean the whole community? Because it sounds to me as though they mean the farming community or the beef and sheep community or the dairy. I'm not sure what they mean. It's unclear, and it happens all the time. It's not a criticism. I'm just asking for further information because it's an unclear expression. Thank you.
We could note that I presumed in my mind we were talking about the rural farming community in this particular case.
Yeah.
Because that's the one that's directly
So it
affected.
would be good if we used that. Okay. Thank you.
We will note that. Thank you. Councillor Beard.
Yeah, so in light of all the what we just talked about and the likelihood or the reality that we are going to be dealing with something and it could all come on quite quickly, is there a thought or does process where can we escalate the number in your team to get on with it? Is there or are there either the land sustainability staff or other staff within the organisation that could be rallied to help put through a pressure point when we finally work out what needs to be done? I don't know whether that's who needs to answer that question. Someone else in the room might need to answer that question.
We've already got vacancies there as Aurora's.
We haven't got a lot of staff sitting around ready to be plugged into this. Everyone's got committed work plans. If there's a civil defence emergency or a flood, people can go in for a couple of days. But not for this sort of thing. We would need to gear up. That's one of the challenges, and that's part of the discussion we'll be having with Wellington about this place, is that if we need to gear up for 1,500 consents, for example, for an 18-month period. Not sure how sensible that is, but we'll have to, and plus Otago, probably a similar amount. Significant resourcing, we'll be all looking for the same sort of people. So that's hugely challenging. So that's part of our conversation around what does that future look like, for this space until farm environment plans are landed.
So is there a contract alternative, or is the consultants, in a sense, are they possible?
I'm sure they'd be saying we can do this, but then they'd be.
I know it's a cost thing, sure, but I guess if there's a hump, how do we get over a hump?
Well,
Without
that's-
again putting on permanents if they're not there, and nor,
Until we're clearer around what's going to be required, then, you know, once we're clear what's required, then we can do the, or the team will be doing the planning for this, and with others. But it's a bit like with consultants, they have to do the same, they have to gear up. You know, my concern is there's not the capacity out there to handle this. Unless we had a very straightforward process through the now named Simon's app. You heard it here first. You know, where it became just purely an admin exercise, and it was just a matter of putting a front page on and doing a bit of quality control. But hey, these are things we'll shape up as we're clear around what's required. But look, it's not sensible to me to think that we'd have to gear up for an 18-month period. But again, we've got to have those conversations.
Thank you.
So through you, Mr. Chair, if I may, as you probably have taken, we're working in a really fluid environment with lots of actors in there, the central government, the new plan, the environment court, etc. So nothing is clear, and we appreciate the support from the councillors when they do get inquiries about this, that there is no quick win on this. We can't just draw a line and say as of December we're going to fix this, etc. But we do take your point. One of the things that Rob is saying to staff quite often is we need to become a more joined up group when we work on these kind of issues. And I take Councillor Baird's point of view and focus as such, in the fact that all teams should be working towards a simplistic result on this. However fluid and murky that environment is at the moment.
Yeah, the proposed, well, the inevitable changes that are coming through in the signal are now impacting on rural farming groups who weren't really affected by worrying about consents in the past, like sheep and beef and contract winter grazing people never really had to worry too much about consents, but now they're going to have to. So there's a lot of unease out there. I do know a number of farmers, and they're, you know, people thinking about contract winter grazing think, well, we do this or not, it might be too hard. So the uncertainty out there is the problem. And I understand that we don't have the answers at the moment, but it just reinforces the need for a really good communications program. Do you find, can I just, leading up to a question, do you find that the people in the consultants groups and the applicants you're getting coming through now, based on what we're doing at the moment, are better informed or more willing to learn?
Yeah, I am finding that. The quality of the applications that we're getting in have definitely increased, if I could measure from, say, this time last year, which is really helpful. As with any group, there's a varying range of engagement with the people that are on the working group. So some consultants very proactive in feeding back what they're hearing and how we're approaching things, good or bad, which is really helpful for us. Others we don't hear much from. But to answer your question, yeah, we are seeing better flow of communication between consultants, applicants and consents team on the matters that we've addressed with the new regime.
I'm just looking here, I don't see it. How many would have been rejected and it was Section 88, is it?
Returned.
Returned?
I think it was 9.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and for, while we're in this period of uncertainty, we're not returning if they haven't met the criteria under the new NES. What we're doing is we're calling them and giving them the opportunities to supply that further information before we make a formal return. So the ones that have been returned there are for other reasons, other deficiencies. So that's just allowing people to get up to speed on the new requirements. That's a fair approach and it has been appreciated by the consultants.
Thank you, Roy. So are there any more questions or commentary on this? This is a really, you know, it's a big change.
I think I was really honest, Mr. Chairman, I'm a little bit annoyed that we've actually got direction coming from Wellington and we don't have the information underneath to make it work. I really think we need to think about this process in a slightly different way, and we're playing catch up on multiple bases, which is hard for everybody. So I understand where the government's going, but the work's not been done in the background to actually support the direction. That's my concern. And it's putting a lot of grief out there. And I'm really worried about what's going to happen next year as a lot of the stuff really comes to the fore and people are, as you pointed out, is not too sure what's going on. And it's certainty about doing business, and that goes right through our community as it touches different people's lives. So yeah, I am disappointed that we're not getting clear, well thought out direction from Wellington if they want to take us down this track.
I think most people would agree with you on that. We're at this table. I think Environment South and sort of in the middle of all this between two forces.
Well, I think
Not
it's even
without
harder.
taking sides one way or another.
No, I'm
We're
not-
trying to get the work
Not
done.
taking it hard, but I was just disappointed we've got a plan in the courts for such a long time and it's been effectively rewritten and we still don't know what it's going to look like. And we've got other work streams that are piling on top of that at the same time. So it's just a little bit disappointing.
The complete review of the resource management legislation
On
will
top of
be
that.
happening
Yeah.
in the next 12 months.
Absolutely.
It may look entirely different. Right, is there any more questions or commentary? If not, I'll thank Aurora for her presentation and ask somebody to
I'll
move the
move to
recommendation. Thanks, Councillor McKill, seconded by Councillor Stevens. Those in favour?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. So we're on to item 10, which is extraordinary and urgent business, and there was none. And then we have public excluded business, item 11, of which there is none. So that brings our meeting to a conclusion. Thank you for your attendance and your participation.